remember the day I decided to help my son Ethan with my life savings. I was in my 60s and I had worked hard for everything I had. I thought of myself as a devoted mother. All those years of sacrifice and love made me believe that my bond with Ethan was strong. Ethan was in his mid-30s. He had dreams, but life had not been kind to him. He struggled to find a stable job after college. I watched him face challenges. I saw him work long hours only to come home tired and frustrated. I wanted to help him. I wanted him to have the life he deserved. I often thought back to his childhood. I remembered the time I stayed up late to help him with his school projects. I remembered the birthday parties I threw for him, the laughter and the joy. I wanted to believe that my sacrifices mattered. I thought they built a strong foundation for our relationship. When Ethan called me one day, he sounded stressed. He spoke about bills piling up and how he wanted to buy a small house. I felt my heart ache for him. I knew I had my retirement savings. It was not a small amount, and part of me hesitated. But I pushed that thought away. I wanted to give him a chance to start fresh. So I made the decision. I cashed in my retirement savings. I felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. I hoped this gift would help him settle down. I imagined us celebrating together, sharing a bond strengthened by my support. I believed it was a gift from my heart. On the day I handed him the money, I felt warmth inside me. I took a deep breath and handed him the envelope. He looked surprised at first. His eyes widened and then a smile broke out on his face. I felt joy. I thought I could see a glimpse of hope in his eyes. But then for a brief moment, I noticed a flicker of hesitation. I dismissed it as stress. He was overwhelmed. "Thank you, Mom," he said, but his voice felt distant. I wanted to believe everything would be fine. I wanted to believe this would bring us closer. Later that day, I went to the kitchen to prepare dinner. I felt a sense of satisfaction. I was doing something good for my son. I thought of all the hard work I had put into saving that money. I was proud of my decision. But then everything changed. I overheard Ethan talking to his friends in the living room. I was putting away some dishes when I heard their laughter. At first it sounded light and cheerful, but then I heard Ethan say something that stopped me cold. He joked about me, saying I was too old to matter. I froze. The words hit me like a punch in the gut. I felt my heart sink. I listened as he continued to mock me, saying how he was just a guest in my life. The laughter that followed felt cruel. I felt tears well up in my eyes. I was not just a source of money. I was his mother. I had given him everything. I stood there, gripping the edge of the counter. I felt betrayed. I had sacrificed so much for him. I thought he understood that. I thought he appreciated it. But now I felt like I had made a terrible mistake. I wanted to confront him, but I couldn't. I felt too hurt and confused. That night, I sat alone in my room. I replayed the conversation in my head. The love I felt turned into doubt. Had I really helped him, or had I made him see me as a burden? I thought of my sacrifices. I had given my retirement savings, and in return, I felt worthless. I saved the memory of that moment deep inside me, not for revenge but for clarity. I wanted to understand what had changed between us. I thought of the home I had given him. I had tried to build a future for him, but now it felt like I was just an old woman with nothing to offer. The next day, I went for a walk to clear my head. I needed to think. I walked through the park, watching families play and children laugh. I missed the bond one had with Ethan. I missed the times when he would seek my advice and tell me about his dreams. Now I felt like I had lost him. I began to think about my own life. I had spent so many years focused on him that I had lost myself along the way. I realized I needed to redefine who I was. I could not let his words define my worth. I needed to find my own happiness again. That evening, I sat in my empty living room, feeling the silence around me. I started to think about what I wanted for myself. I had given so much, but I needed to find a way to reclaim my identity. I wondered if it was time to stand up for myself. I knew I had to make a choice. I could either continue to feel hurt and alone or take a step toward my own future. I wanted to find peace and I wanted to feel valued, both as a mother and as a person. But first, I had to understand my relationship with Ethan. It was time to confront the truth. After that painful conversation, I struggled to find my footing. I felt a mix of betrayal and confusion. I tried to act normal around Ethan, but it was hard. Every time I saw him, I remembered his words. They echoed in my mind, making me feel small. Ethan moved into his new home shortly after I gave him the money. At first, I hoped it would bring us closer. I thought he would appreciate my help and be grateful. But things changed quickly. As he settled into his new life, I noticed he was different. He became more distant and dismissive. He started to hang out with new friends. They were younger and seemed to have more fun than I could understand. I felt left out. I wanted to share moments with him, but he was often too busy for me. He would brush off my texts and calls. I felt like I was losing my son all over again. I began to feel lonely. I tried to reach out to old friends, thinking they could help fill the gap. We met for coffee, but I felt out of place. They talked about their lives, their families, and their trips. I listened, but my heart was heavy. I felt like I was living in the past while everyone else was moving forward. One evening, I decided to host a family gathering. I hoped it would bring us together. I invited Ethan, his friends, and some family members. I cooked his favorite meal, thinking it would remind him of the good times we had. But when he arrived, he acted like I was just a background character in his life. He barely spoke to me and spent most of the time with his friends. During dinner, I couldn't hold back. I confronted him about his comments. I asked him if he really thought I was too old to matter. He laughed it off, saying it was just a joke. But I felt anger rise within me. I told him it hurt to hear those words. He looked confused, as if he didn't understand my pain. The argument escalated. He accused me of being controlling and too involved in his life. I felt my heart break. I had only tried to help him. I felt like I was being punished for my love. The tension was thick and no one knew how to respond. I excused myself and left the room. After that night, things only got worse. I learned that Ethan had been sharing details of our family's finances with his friends. He framed me as a burden instead of a supporter. I could hardly believe it. I felt the weight of shame. I had given him everything, and now he was making me feel like I was the problem. The distance between us grew. I felt like I was losing him more every day. I spent my evenings alone, thinking about what had happened. I wanted to scream, to cry, to make him understand. But instead, I felt trapped in my silence. One day, I decided to visit the community center. They were hosting classes and activities. I thought it might be a good way to meet new people and distract myself. As I entered the building, I felt a wave of hope wash over me. Maybe this was a chance to find myself again. I joined a painting class. I had always loved art, but I had put it aside for years. As I picked up the brush, I felt a spark of joy. I poured my feelings onto the canvas. With each stroke, I felt lighter. I began to rediscover who I was outside of being Ethan's mother. Over the weeks, I started to make new friends in the class. We shared our stories and laughed together. I felt a sense of belonging and support. I realized I had more to offer the world than just my role as a mother. I began to understand that I could enjoy my life, even without Ethan's approval. But as I grew stronger, I noticed Ethan's reaction. He began to notice the changes in me. I felt his uncertainty. He seemed unsettled, as if my transformation threatened his sense of control. I saw him watching me from a distance, frowning when I shared my new experiences. One afternoon, I went to an art show in the community. I was proud of my work and wanted to share it with others. As I stood there, I spotted Ethan walking in. He looked surprised to see me. I felt a mix of emotions. I was proud but also nervous. He walked closer and looked at my paintings. I saw a flicker of recognition in his eyes. For the first time, he seemed to see me as more than just his mother. I felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps he was beginning to understand the value of our relationship. But then he turned away, chatting with his friends. I felt a twinge of disappointment. I had hoped he would reach out, but he didn't. I realized I couldn't force him to change. I had to focus on my own journey. As I left the show, I felt a sense of determination. I was becoming someone I liked. I wanted to keep growing. I wanted to show Ethan that I was not just a burden. I was a person with my own dreams and passions. The time had come for me to set boundaries. I would no longer let his words define my worth. I would reclaim my independence and my joy. I knew it was time to stop seeking his approval. I could no longer allow our relationship to be one-sided. As I walked home, I felt lighter. I knew I was on the right path. I was ready to face whatever came next, whether it was with Ethan or on my own. I had finally started to rebuild my life, and I was determined to keep going. After the art show, I felt a new sense of purpose. I was learning to embrace my own identity. I decided to dive deeper into my hobbies and interests. I joined more classes at the community center, including pottery and creative writing. I found joy in expressing myself and meeting new people. My days became filled with color and creativity. With each class, I felt more confident. I met others who shared my passion for art. We laughed, shared stories, and supported each other. I felt a sense of belonging I hadn't experienced in a long time. I realized how important it was to surround myself with positive energy. I no longer felt like a burden, I felt like a person with dreams and goals. Ethan began to notice the changes in me. At first, he seemed uncomfortable. He would call me less often, and when we did speak, his tone felt distant. I sensed a shift in our dynamic. It was as if he was unsure of how to relate to the new me. I watched as he struggled to find his place in my life. One evening, I invited him to the community center's open mic night. I wanted him to see how much I had grown. I hoped it would spark something in him, a desire to reconnect. When he arrived, I was nervous but excited. I wanted him to be proud of me. As I stood on the small stage, I shared my poetry. I poured my heart into my words. I spoke about love, loss, and finding myself again. I could see Ethan in the audience, watching intently. For a moment, I felt a connection. I hoped he could feel my passion. After the show, he approached me. His expression was hard to read. I could see something shifting within him. He told me he was impressed by my performance. I felt a spark of hope but also fear. I wanted to reach out, but I wasn't sure if he was ready to open up. Ethan seemed to struggle with his feelings. I could tell he felt threatened by my independence. He had always relied on me for support. Now I was finding my own way, and it scared him. I wanted to reassure him that my growth did not mean I loved him any less. I wanted him to know that I still cared. But as days passed, he became more distant. I noticed he spent more time with his friends. He rarely called, and when he did, our conversations felt forced. I felt a mix of sadness and frustration. I wanted my son back, the one who used to share his dreams with me. One afternoon, I decided to confront him. I invited him over for dinner. I spent the day cooking his favorite meal, hoping to create a warm atmosphere. When he arrived, I greeted him with a smile, but I felt the tension in the air. During dinner, I took a deep breath and spoke up. I told him I noticed how distant he had become. I expressed my concern and my desire to reconnect. Instead of opening up, he became defensive. He claimed he was busy and had a lot on his plate. I felt my heart drop. I pushed further, asking him if he regretted accepting my help. He looked away, avoiding my gaze. I could see the conflict in his eyes. He finally admitted that he felt overwhelmed by everything, including the pressure of living in the house I had helped him buy. His words hit me hard. I realized that my gift had come with expectations he was not ready for. I had hoped it would bring us closer, but instead it felt like a burden to him. I felt a wave of empathy wash over me. I told him I wanted to help him learn financial responsibility, not just give him money. I wanted him to stand on his own 2 feet, but I also wanted him to know that I believed in him. I wanted him to understand that my love for him was not tied to my financial support. Ethan listened, and I could see a flicker of understanding in his eyes. He nodded slowly, but I could tell he was still struggling with his feelings. I knew it would take time for him to accept my perspective. That evening, we talked late into the night. We shared our fears and hopes. I listened as he opened up about the pressure he felt. I realized that he was scared of failing. I had always seen him as strong, but in that moment I understood that he felt lost. As we talked, I felt a shift between us. It was as if we were both beginning to see each other more clearly. I could sense the walls coming down. For the first time in a long while, I felt hopeful about our relationship. After that night, things began to change. Ethan started reaching out more often. He would ask for my advice on his finances, and I was happy to help. I wanted him to feel empowered and capable. I continued to focus on my own growth as well. I kept painting and exploring new avenues of creativity. I felt a sense of fulfillment that I hadn't felt in years. I was becoming the person I had always wanted to be. As we rebuilt our relationship, I noticed a new respect growing between us. I was no longer just his mother. I was a person with my own dreams. And he was no longer just my son. He was a man learning to stand on his own. I could see that we were both on a path to understanding. I believed that our journey was only beginning. I felt hopeful for the future, knowing that together, we could create a new bond based on love, respect, and independence. Months passed, and I felt a growing sense of peace. My relationship with Ethan began to heal. We were slowly learning to communicate openly. I felt proud of the progress we were making together. But I also knew that we still had a long way to go. One evening, I decided to host another dinner. I wanted to celebrate our new understanding. I cooked a simple meal filled with warmth and love. When Ethan arrived, he seemed more relaxed. We shared stories and laughter. I felt the distance between us shrinking. After dinner, I noticed a shift in Ethan's demeanor. He looked serious. I sensed that he wanted to talk about something important. I felt my heart race as he took a deep breath. "Mom," he began, "I've been thinking a lot about our conversations. I want to apologize for how I treated you before. I was scared and overwhelmed, and I didn't know how to handle everything." I felt a wave of emotion wash over me. I had hoped for this moment, but hearing it made my heart swell. I told him that I understood. I explained that I had also been scared, but I never stopped loving him. I wanted him to know that he mattered to me not just because of my support but because of who he was. He nodded and I could see the weight lifting off his shoulders. "I've realized that I need to take responsibility for my life," he said. "I don't want to see you as a burden anymore. I want to learn how to stand on my own." I felt a sense of relief. We were finally on the same page. I encouraged him to seek help if he needed it. I wanted him to feel empowered. Together, we discussed ways he could manage his finances and set goals for the future. As we talked, I noticed that Ethan was beginning to reflect on his past choices. He shared his fears about failing and how he had let those fears consume him. I listened without judgment. I wanted him to feel safe opening up to me. After our conversation, Ethan started to take small steps toward independence. He began budgeting his expenses and seeking advice from a financial planner. I felt proud of him. I could see the determination in his eyes, and it reminded me of the boy I once knew. One day, Ethan asked me to join him for lunch. As we sat together at a small cafe, he told me about his plans. He wanted to save money for his own goals, including starting a small business. I could see the spark in his eyes. It made my heart swell with pride. But then he paused. "Mom, I know I've relied on you too much in the past," he said. "I want to change that. I want you to know that I see you as my partner, not just my support." His words touched me deeply. I realized that we were now two individuals supporting each other, not just mother and son. We were building a new relationship based on mutual respect. As time went on, our bond grew stronger. We shared more moments of laughter and support. I continued to explore my passions, and Ethan would often ask to see my artwork. I felt a sense of joy in sharing my life with him. Then one day Ethan surprised me. He arrived home with a small gift. A sketchbook. "I thought you might want to try something new," he said. "You always encouraged me to follow my dreams, so I want to encourage you too." Tears filled my eyes. I was touched by his thoughtfulness. In that moment I realized how far we had come. We were both learning from each other. We were both growing. But there was still something I needed to address. I wanted to confront the past, to close the chapter on the hurt I had felt. One evening I sat down with Ethan. I told him how much his earlier comments had hurt me. I explained that it was not just about the money but about feeling valued. Ethan listened intently. I could see that he was reflecting on my words. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I didn't realize how my words affected you. I was acting out of fear and frustration. I never wanted to hurt you," he said. I felt a sense of closure as we spoke. I knew that forgiveness was a journey, and we were both on it together. I hugged him tightly, knowing that we could move forward with a deeper understanding. As we embraced, I felt a wave of love wash over me. I realized that the love I had given Ethan was not wasted. It had become the foundation for our new relationship. We were both learning to respect and appreciate each other in ways we had never done before. In the months that followed, we continued to build our future together. Ethan worked hard to establish his business, and I focused on my art. We celebrated each other's successes and encouraged one another during challenges. I found peace in knowing that my worth was not tied to my financial contributions. I was a mother, yes, but I was also a person with dreams and passions. I was reclaiming my life, and it felt good. As I looked at my son, I knew we were both on a path to understanding. We had faced our fears and learned to communicate openly. I felt grateful for the journey we had taken together. In the end, we both learned that love is not just about giving or receiving. It's about respect, understanding, and growing together. I felt hopeful for the future, knowing that we had built a strong foundation for a healthy, loving relationship. I looked forward to what lay ahead, ready to embrace it with open arms.